Across time, 9,000 BC to this day, across civilization, from Asia to the Americas, the best architecture over and over and over again is architecture devoted to something spiritual. Call it religion, call it, community, call it whatever you want to call it, but it's something bigger than the self, bigger than a person, bigger than even a particular culture.
It's often said that sacred architectural spaces elicit profound feelings of awe, enlightenment, well-being, a connection to the spiritual. Professor Julio Bermudez is deploying modern technology and comparing both sacred and secular spaces to measure and test the cognitive, physiological, and psychological impacts of built spaces.
Once you are trying to understand how architecture works empirically, you can measure things. You first are trying to find some sort of theoretical framework that makes sense. And one of the powerful theoretical frameworks is what is called aesthetic cognitivism. Aesthetic cognitivism asserts that the experience of art is cognitive, is epistemologically productive, meaning it delivers knowledge or understanding, and is empirically testable.
To test this claim, Professor Bermudez recruited a group of 30 Roman Catholics to visit 2 Washington, D.C. buildings on consecutive days: Union Station and the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. Both are beautiful spaces with ornate vaulted ceilings, liberal use of marble and statuary. Both are designed to accommodate masses of people, but one is intentionally sacred and the other is not.
How do you measure human responses to architecture with today's technology? That's the question. We start about 100 yards away from the buildings. The subjects are told you're visiting the building, you're not going to go to mass or you're not going to go to take a train, but you go to visit the building. The empirical side of it, which is kind of more the medical or physiological part, has 2 components. One is the brain, which is kind of the most important one, is going to be gauged through ambulatory EEG, electroencephalogram, that measures 20 points of the brain on the electrical activity of the brain. The other aspect of it is measuring the corporal physiology. And this is done with a wristband that measures heart rate, blood pressure, heart rate variability, the electric conductivity of the skin, and a couple other things, the speed of movement, and so on. So this wristband allows us to correlate the brain with the whole body. No matter how emotional or how spiritual or how sensual it is fundamentally cognitive. It had to go through, basically your brain at some level.
Alongside these physiological measurements, the team will compare the subject's psychological responses to a set of questions asked during the experience. Professor Bermudez's research team is multidisciplinary, including an architect, a neurologist, a cognitive scientist, a theologian, and an electrical engineer.
This idea of looking at sacred space and understand how is it possible that something like material, organized matter, could produce a connection with something transcendental. It's important for a very simple reason, is that when you feel like that, you begin to act in the world very differently. You see the other in a different way. We see, what constitutes development in different ways. Right now, we're about 8 billion people on this planet. And within about 30, 40 years, we're going to hit about 12 billion. Think about that. We're going to build more now than we have ever built. We know the built environment profoundly affects our well-being, and not just personally, but also how a society operates. That for millennia, this was just discussed, but never been able to measure it or to test it. The fact that this is happening is just by itself incredible. That whatever we learn is something we're going to know for the first time in human history.